and other businesses began to sell merchandise with their own versions of the pine tree flag. Now, many Mainers and tourists recognize the flag as a symbol of the state.
I think the people of Maine have already voted.
Euaoi.
If it wasn't already obvious, the United States just had an election. Not only were Americans voting for who should be the next president, but they were also voting for senators, representatives. Some states were also voting for a governor, as well as some statewide measures. One statewide measure I'd like to go more into detail about is Maine Question 5, which was a referendum on whether or not the current state flag of Maine should be replaced with an updated version of the pine tree flag, which was the original state flag of Maine from 1901 to 1909. And if you didn't already know this, the pine tree flag lost with only 45% of the popular vote compared to the current flag's 55%. As for my opinion, I'm a firm believer that the best flags are the ones that the people they're supposed to be representing have the most love and admiration for. But if I was a Maine voter, I probably would have voted for the pine tree flag. But in the end, that's not what the citizens of Maine wanted, and because of it, their current flag is objectively the better one, because that's what they voted for. While I have made videos in the past rating flag designs, I mentioned that everything I say there is entirely opinion-based. And I just rated the designs based on how much I personally like them without going by any established guidelines. But before I start, I'm only reviewing these flags based on how much I like them, and not other factors like no words, no fancy complicated shapes, or too many colors. Because to me, I don't really care about those things. If the flag has an easily distinguishable, memorable design, then that's good enough for me. And the main reason I started making flag videos was because my initial video showcasing Minnesota's redesign process ended up becoming very popular on my old channel, which in turn made me want to do more flag videos. On top of that, I'm also a huge geography nerd and I have a career background in graphic design, which just made me naturally attracted to the topic of flags. Going back on topic, not all of the people who voted or would have voted for the pine tree flag held the same beliefs as I do, as some people just started acting out against the Maine voters for voting against it. Upon hearing the news, I checked to see how the Vexillology subreddit is taking the news, and boy are they not happy. Since most of these posts were them complaining about how the voters chose a seal on a bedsheet design over something that they deemed to be more original. There have also been a bunch of posts calling Maine voters stupid for not going with the design they wanted. Because, let's be real here, calling them stupid is totally gonna make them want to change their mind. There have also been some people saying that democracy has failed because of the flag vote, which is honestly just laughable to me. There was even one person who went to the most extreme measures calling for a scorched earth over the Maine voters not picking their precious pine tree. If you think I'm cherry picking, I managed to find responses from more level-headed people on the subreddit giving possible reasons as for why Maine voters rejected the pine tree. One Maine resident on the subreddit noticed about how the ballot didn't include the pictures of the two different flags, with another Maine voter who asked no voters in their state why they voted the way they did. And it was because some of them didn't know what the other flag looked like and just picked no as the default. There was also another user who cited another reason why the Maine voters voted no, with the reasons being they didn't want there to be any additional costs for phasing out the old state flag. And there was one more user who gave this very detailed response that honestly just makes a lot of sense. With voters citing concerns over costs, their dislike of the pine tree flag design used in this referendum or the design in general, or not liking how it's similar to the Appeal to Heaven flag. And most importantly, they just like their current state flag, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people have also been stating that some Mainers have been making stupid conspiracy theories about how changing the flag is woke because it's removing white people from the flag, or how the star makes it look communist for some reason, which I don't really get. Despite this, some Redditors are blaming Trump voters for the pine tree flag losing by doing an overlay of the presidential election results in Maine with the results of the flag referendum by community. And honestly, this logic really doesn't make any sense, since Kamala Harris won the state of Maine in the 2024 election. This means that many Harris voters voted no on the flag referendum. This is also evident by looking at the polling for Maine Question 5 broken down by political ideology, where we clearly see the pine tree losing in every ideological demographic except for those who identify as very liberal. But I didn't just want to take their word on it, so I went to the Maine subreddit, and yes, I know, this subreddit is not an accurate representation of the Maine population, but it's on the same site, so I just went with it, to see if their reasons for voting no line up with the reasons that were mentioned in the Vexillology subreddit. And going based on what I saw on the Maine subreddit, a lot of them actually hated the pine tree flag. Whether it was because they didn't like how the pine tree on the flag looked, or they just thought the design in general looked very tacky. Some people also thought that the Dorigo motto should stay on the Maine flag, with Dorigo meaning I lead in Latin. Also, going back on design choices, one user said they would have much rather seen a moose than a pine tree, with another wanting to see a lobster instead, with some just not caring at all. One Mainer noted that a lot of the tourist towns and COVID transplant towns voted yes based on the vote breakdown by settlement. And their reasoning for this is because those are the people who are seeing the pine tree flag the most often. After seeing these responses, it honestly just makes so much sense as for why the Maine voters voted no on changing their flag. Once you step out of the seal on a bedsheet bad hive mind, their reasons feel so much more relatable to the average Joe, rather than just the flag junkies. On the Twitter side, some Twitter users were not happy when they heard the news that the pine tree flag lost in the referendum. There was one user who went off on a massive rant, dropping F-bombs with a frequency on par with that of a Seth Rogen film and calling them stupid for not voting the way they wanted them to. With that tweet not being the only one to call the Maine voters stupid. There's also this tweet calling for Mainers to be enslaved for just having what they consider the wrong opinion. There's this tweet calling for Maine to be a part of Massachusetts again, and if you aren't familiar with US history, Maine actually started out as a part of Massachusetts. There's yet another tweet calling Maine residents losers. There's also one tweet that says they're disappointed but could understand why Mainers voted the way they did given the Reddit tier flag redesigns. There's also another tweet complaining about why the majority of voters are always wrong about everything, with another tweet calling for Canada to annex Maine, and one more saying that the pine tree flag would have won had they put the pictures of the flags on the ballot, which, as stated earlier, they didn't. While I was expecting most of the tweets to be negative, I actually found a lot of tweets that were thankful that the pine tree flag ultimately lost. And going based on the tweets that I saw, I feel like the tweets supporting the current state flag had a higher percentage of actual Maine residents than those supporting the pine tree flag. Which goes back to my point as for why the current flag is objectively the better flag. I should also mention that a lot of these tweets mention about how YouTuber CGP Grey ended up getting wrecked by the results of the vote. The reason why CGP Grey was the target from those supporting the current flag was because of his famous, or infamous depending on how you view it, video where he placed the 50 US state flags on a tier list. In Gray's video, he graded the 50 US state flags by these following guidelines.
Keep it simple, something a child could draw. Make it distinct at a distance. No tiny details. 3 colors or fewer. Your colors and what you design with them should mean something. Words on a flag. 0.
Maine's flag ended up getting placed in the F tier along with half of the US states for violating most, if not all, of Gray's guidelines. Especially since Gray was heavily critical of the seal on blue designs and the writing your name on the flag design. Designs that were both used for a lot of US states, including Maine. And what's funny about this is, Gray wasn't the creator of those guidelines. He instead got those guidelines from a booklet titled Good Flag, Bad Flag by Ted Kay from the North American Vexillological Association. With the North American Vexillological Association that I'm going to be referring to by its acronym NAVA from here on out, being an international nonprofit scholarly organization dedicated to vexillology and is the largest association of its kind in the world. And it should also be noted that NAVA is the main culprit behind the flag reform movement that's been silently sweeping this country. The North American Vexillological Association was formed in 1967 by a man named Whitney Smith, who was a political science student at Harvard University and had a passion for flag design at an early age. Prior to NAVA's founding, Smith worked with then Guyanese president Cheddi Jagan to design Guyana's new flag in the early 1960s. Since then, NAVA has overseen vigorous publications programs, organizes annual meetings, usually in October, in which vexillologists convene and showcase their research, and support flag conservation and flag research projects. They have even assisted numerous governments on designing their flags, which includes Aruba, Bonaire, and the Saudi Arabian Navy. In 2001, NAVA conducted their first online survey where they ranked 72 flags of the states and territories of the United States and all of the provinces and territories of Canada, with the instructions saying, based on their design qualities rather than any political, historical, or geographic considerations, please rate each flag from 0 to 10. Where 0 is the worst score and 10 is the best. Use your personal opinion about what constitutes a good flag design, with the sample size consisting of 100 NAVA members and 337 members of the public. As for how the public responded to this survey, people and publishers from states with flags that ranked well found solace in the results. In New Mexico, the Albuquerque Journal editorialized, "Flagpoles should have state flipping." The Halifax Daily News headlined, "Flag fans' hearts aflutter over Nova Scotia banner. Scottish-based emblem rates second in Canada, only trails 10 US entries." The Columbus Dispatch said, "Ohioans may not realize it, but a triumph of design has fluttered atop flagpoles across the state for almost a century." Meanwhile, people and publishers from places where their flags ranked low found the results to be rather questionable. Kansas Secretary of State Ron Thornburg had this to say about the survey. "I think our flag does a nice job of talking about the traditions and history of Kansas." Then Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura said in an email to the Grand Forks Herald, "I think it's kind of funny that someone calls themselves experts on something as subjective as judging aesthetics. If I'm an expert on dogs, does that mean I know better than anyone which breed is the prettiest?" And here's my personal favorite. When then Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee found out that the name Arkansas being written was why the flag was ranked so low, he responded by saying, "They had a problem with the word Arkansas? It's the name of our state." He thought the criticism was what he might expect from idiots who have nothing better to do than rank state flags. What a stupid way to spend their time. NAVA conducted another survey in 2004, but this time, the rating involved 150 US city flags, with a similar sample size of 66 NAVA members and 415 members of the public. And as you would expect, the higher-ranked flags followed NAVA's good flag, bad flag guidelines, while the lower-ranked flags didn't. The bad US city flags were then brought up in a 2015 TED Talk by Roman Mars titled, "Why City Flags May Be the Worst Designed Thing You've Never Noticed." In that video, he lists the 5 guidelines of good flag, bad flag, and shows examples of US cities that don't adhere to those guidelines and comparing it to international cities that do. Since that TED Talk, over 300 cities ended up changing their flags, which resulted in NAVA conducting another poll in 2022, with a sample size of almost 3,000 individuals, where the survey graded the flags using a letter grading system. Another interesting tidbit is that some of the A-rank flags included cities that were ranked in the bottom 10 from the 2004 survey, such as Montpelier, Vermont, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Pocatello, Idaho. Not only have cities gotten flag redesigns, but now states are getting flag redesigns as well, with states such as Mississippi, Utah, and Minnesota already changing their state flags within the past decade, and Illinois is currently in the process of adopting a new state flag. Sure, Mississippi and Minnesota changed their flags due to the old designs using symbolism that could be deemed offensive, but Utah and Illinois are adopting new designs just for the sake of having something stand out. Which leads me to my opinion of NAVA. As for my opinion on NAVA, I honestly just feel like they're completely missing the idea of what a flag should be. Because, to me, a flag should be something that represents and unites a country, ethnicity, or any other type of community, and have historical and cultural significance behind it, regardless of how it looks. Whereas NAVA seems to prioritize looks over cultural and historical significance. While it may not seem like it at first, the seal on a blue banner flags actually have a lot of historical significance to it, dating all the way back to the US Civil War. According to the revised United States Army Regulations of 1861, each regiment of infantry shall have 2 silken colors. The first, or the national color, of stars and stripes, the second, or regimental color, to be blue, with the arms of the United States embroidered in silk on the center. Flags were also a major symbol of pride. A regimental state standard included the U.S. coat of arms hand-printed or embroidered on and the name of the regiment, home state, and battle honors.
During the Civil War, each of the more than 30 regiments from Maine had its own battle flag, with some using that seal as part of the design.
In fact, the divide between the Union and the Confederacy can still be seen within the design of the state flags today. Since many of the Union states at the time of the US Civil War feature a blue banner, while the states that were a part of the Confederacy opted for a different look. As for the blue banner state flags, not all of them put their seal on the flag, with an example being the state of Indiana, where the graphic on their flag looks nothing like their seal, even though their older flag did feature their state seal. While for some states like New Hampshire, sure they put their seal on their flag, but there are also additional details surrounding that seal. Since their seal is wrapped around a laurel wreath, which is an ancient symbol of fame, honor, and victory, with the 9 stars surrounding it representing the fact that New Hampshire was the 9th state to join the Union. Another example of a blue banner flag that doesn't feature the state seal would be Connecticut, since their seal looks like this, while this symbol is the state's coat of arms. In fact, a lot of the seals that are used for US states can be traced back to a book from 1876 titled State Arms of the Union, which was illustrated by Henry Mitchell and published by Louis Prang. The book features historically accurate renderings of the state's coat of arms as they existed in 1876. Since the time it was published, it doesn't include all of the US states, but for the ones that are there, the designs present are heavily reminiscent of the graphics present on their state flags. Or former state flags like Colorado, where their old state flag featured a variant of their historic coat of arms. Meanwhile, the states that aren't present there, like Arizona, Alaska, and Hawaii, also do not have a historical coat of arms, and could be a possible reason as for why their state flags ended up taking more unique designs. So while not all US states have a blue banner flag, there's just so much historical insight as for why some states do and some states don't. And that's why I believe the blue banner flags, which are generally considered to be bad, are actually good, unlike Reddit's proposed redesigns. Another complaint I hear from online vexillologists is that the blue banner flags are hard to differentiate, especially at a distance where flags are typically viewed. And while it may be true for some states, even for the small US state icons on Wikipedia, I can easily identify Alaska, Connecticut, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, Nevada, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Virginia. And just an FYI, the United States isn't the only country where their local flags have seals and or writing on them. Every municipality in Portugal has their seal on their flag, and that's mainly due to the strict rules enacted for Portuguese vexillology. Most, if not all, of the provincial flags for Thailand and the Philippines all happen to have seals on them. All of Australia's state flags feature the British ensign with a different graphic on the right of the flag. Meanwhile, Denmark's regions don't even have flags, and instead choose to opt for logos. What I'm trying to say is, the US states aren't the only subregions of a country that fail to follow NAVA's restrictive guidelines. As for my opinion on the flag reform movement, I believe that changing a flag is sometimes for the better. If it feels like the old flag no longer does a good job at representing the people that it's supposed to be representing. An example would be how South Africa changed their flag in the 1990s to their current design because the old flag had themes of colonialism and apartheid in the old design, which was why they changed it to their current flag seen today. Or how Canada changed their old flag to the iconic maple leaf flag of today since Canadians at the time were overwhelmingly in favor of a national flag that's different from any other nation. While Canadians wanted to ditch the Union Jack from their flag, the citizens of New Zealand didn't feel the same way about their flag, which was why they voted to keep their flag over the fern leaf design in the 2016 referendum. On the topic of the Union Jack, the Republic of Fiji was also in the process of ditching the Union Jack from their flag at around the same time the New Zealand flag referendum took place, only to abandon the process once Fiji won their first gold medal at the 2016 Olympics, where Fijians celebrated the event by using Fiji's current flag. But with the 300 plus US cities that changed their flags following the 2015 TED Talk, I feel like these cities only changed their flag designs for no other reason aside from some guy said that they were just bad. And since all of those flag redesigns followed NAVA's 5 guidelines from good flag, bad flag, a lot of these redesigns to me just feel soulless. While there are some flag redesigns that I think will withstand the test of time, like Lincoln, Nebraska, Topeka, Kansas, Durham, North Carolina, Euclid, Ohio, Metairie, Louisiana, Dodge City, Kansas, Anaheim, California, and Salem, Oregon. A lot of these redesigns to me look more like corporate logos rather than, well, flags. Such as Coral Springs, Florida, Peoria, Arizona, Julian, California, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Manhattan, Kansas, Dowagiac, Michigan, Columbia, South Carolina, Madison, Georgia, Redding, California, and Reno, Nevada. And while this may seem like an unpopular opinion, I think some of the D rank and even F rank flags from the 2022 survey have more soul than some of the A rank and B rank flags. What's even worse is that there are more and more people that are treating the 5 guidelines from good flag, bad flag as the law of the land for flag design. Aside from CGP Grey, there's this website called Flags for Good where you can buy flags of US states and cities, but only the ones that they approve of. Okay, Michael, we get it. You're upset that the pine tree flag lost. It's just a flag. Get over it. Aside from selling failed proposed flags like the 1901 Maine flag or the Pennsylvania Keystone flag, they also sell a bunch of generic redesigns that they deem to be an improvement. For some states, such as Vermont, Virginia, and Wisconsin, they'll sell you a redesign of a flag they made, but not the official one. Sorry, no exposed Virginia breasts for you. And for some states, they just straight up lie to you and try to sell you some random design designed as the state flag. Such as Massachusetts, Kansas, Oklahoma, Indiana, Rhode Island, and Wyoming, with Indiana and Wyoming being slight modifications that don't include the seal and writing. While some states don't even have flags represented on that site, whether it would be the official, a redesign, or the flags of their cities. What's even cringier is that some of these flags have the slogan, "Better State Flags," written on it, like they have genuinely convinced themselves that these phonies are an improvement over the real deal. And when you take a look at the Better State Flags page, the headline says in plain text, "Most state flags suck, so we are doing something about it." In other words, they're doing something about it by only selling you the good state flags and selling you generic redesigns that no average Joe would try to fly to represent their state, with some states being flat out ignored entirely. Good job, Flags for Good. Bravo. And some of you might be thinking, well, they're a small business. Maybe they don't have the budget to print some of the more complicated flag designs. To which I say, you can buy the Mexican flag there as well, which just so happens to feature a complicated design. So they literally have no excuse aside from, your flag isn't NAVA approved, so therefore it's bad, and therefore we're not going to sell you it. If you want to buy a US state flag, just go to flags.com. It's a family-owned business that'll sell you all of the official US state flags, and without any of the whiny pretentiousness of saying that their fakes are, quote-unquote, better.
A vote to change Maine state flags from this thing, which I think we can all agree it's fine if this goes away.
Bruh.
Speaking of better state flags, the flag reform movement is now starting to direct itself towards state flags. Since we're only halfway through the 2020s, and so far 3 states have already redesigned their flags, with Illinois currently in the process of adopting a new state flag. 2 of the 3 states that have underwent redesigns had their old flags featuring symbolism and imagery that seemed to be insensitive. But some states like Utah and now Illinois are changing them just for the sake of changing them. There were also some states that have tried to change their state flag but ended up not passing through state legislature. An example would be when Nebraska State Senator Burke Harr proposed redesigning the Nebraska state flag. Since their state flag was accidentally flown upside down at the Capitol for 10 whole days with no one noticing, where it was ultimately shot down by the state Senate. There have also been a decent amount of proposals from the Vermont government to change their state flag back to the flag of the Green Mountain Boys. On January 11th, 2021, then Governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, signed a bill establishing a commission to change the state flag and seal by October 1st, 2021. Only for the deadline to be extended many times to the point where the issue just faded away. In 2017, Pennsylvania resident Tara Stark designed the Keystone flag as an alternative to Pennsylvania's current state flag, with the flag incorporating a keystone symbol, a symbol that's pretty much synonymous with the state of Pennsylvania, into a tricolor using the colors on the coat of arms of Pennsylvania as an intentional callback to the symbolism of the existing flag. The design was formally released into the public domain in August 2022. Stark launched a Kickstarter campaign in November 2022 to print flags and create other merchandise featuring the design, where its popularity had grown and pins of it were even being worn by state legislators. But no legislation has been passed since then.
As it waves in the wind, can you make out what's on Pennsylvania's state flag? Take a look at these ones, just a few of the 20 similar flags still using the blue background. Oh, and here's ours. Did it jump out at you? But change can be hard.
No, I don't think it needs to change. I think there's something to be said for tradition. History is important, and if we keep changing everything, then why do we have history?
What's even funnier is that over a decade earlier, Pennsylvania legislature had proposed adding its name to the current state flag design, which obviously didn't pass. Speaking of flag redesigns that NAVA would hate, New Hampshire Representative Tim McGuff proposed a bill that would have modified the flag to add the motto, "Live Free or Die" in Times New Roman beneath the seal. The bill was ultimately rejected in February 2024. Meanwhile, one NAVA no-no design that actually got approved was when New York changed their state flag in 2020, which added the motto, "E Pluribus Unum," below the Excelsior motto. As for my opinion on all of these flag change proposals, all I have to say is, if that's what their people want, then I have no problem with it. Unlike Minnesota's flag redesign, where a 49% plurality wished to keep their existing state flag. God, that whole process was a mess. To sum everything up, flags exist to represent a nation, ethnicity, or any kind of society. If the people love those flags and have pride in them, they're good, and if they don't, then they're bad and need to be replaced. There's no guidelines, no rules, or no laws for what makes a flag good aside from, do the people that this flag is supposed to be representing love it? And I'm just sick of people saying that a flag sucks because it isn't designed in a way that they approve of. If you're a Maine resident who voted for the pine tree design or a Pennsylvanian who loved the design of the Keystone flag, then you are free to display them outside your apartment or house or wherever you want. Sure, the flag you'll be displaying won't be the official state flag, but there are no laws preventing you from flying an alternate design. And for all of you people that live in states with seal on blue banner design flags, and you hear some people on the internet telling you that your state flag sucks, just tell them that your flag isn't for them. Anyways, that's all I have for today, and I'll see you next time.